It's time for another Dice Tower review with Z. Garcia.
Hey everybody, Z Garcia here. Today I'm taking a look at Guns and Steel Renaissance, which is a follow-up to the original Guns of Steel, and it is, just like the first one, a Civilization-style card game. A pretty simple one, really, compared to Civ games especially, but one that does pack quite a bit into what amounts to just a little deck of cards. So, what do I think of it? And I'll also tell you what I think of it compared to the first one. Well, let's take a look at an overview first so you see how this whole thing operates, and then I'll tell you. So here's what the game looks like, pretty much set up and ready to begin. You are going to have these culture cards set up in a pyramid from ancient times all the way up to the space age up here. Everybody's given some cubes, and everybody is given a starting hand of cards with different effects on the front and resources on the back, and this is true for every one of these cards. You also are going to make a pile over here on the side of these culture tokens, and then you are ready to begin. The objective of the game, what you'll be doing in the game, is using resources and playing cards to acquire more of these cards to race the other players to a victory, and that victory is going to come from culture acquired by these cards, acquired by the tokens themselves, and acquired by these monuments, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on, but they would be sitting over here to the side of these lines, one per line depending on the age, okay? So that's basically it. So what does a turn encompass? The turn is going to have 4 phases. You're going to have the resource phase, the development phase, the purchase phase, and then just an end of turn phase where you do some cleanup and things like that. So at the beginning, let's say it's going to be the yellow player's turn. The first thing I do is the resource phase. I am going to pick a card, and I am going to play that card face down for whatever the resource is on the back. I'm just going to put it over here for now. So I've just given myself food. That's what I have. And now during the second phase, the development phase, I would play a card face up for whatever the effect is. For example, in this case, this card says it's mining, and it says replenish 1 iron card to its resource side. Now what that means is, whenever this card is face down like so, it is the resource. As I spend it, I would flip it face up, and it is now spent. If I had this card here on the table, spent, and I play this replenish 1 iron card, while I would then flip this card over again, and I now have replenished that iron. I have it again to use. So that's basically it. You're going to play a card, face down, play one, face up, do whatever it says, and then you are going to go into the buy phase where you can spend the resources to acquire these cards. Typically from the bottom, but you can go a little bit further up for, well, exponentially higher costs. The cards down here act pretty much like the ones you begin the game with. They have some resource on the back, which is tied to the line at which, what age they sit at, and they have some effect on the front, which is both symbolically represented as well as written out there for you. You buy it up by flipping this one, for example, over here on the side. It tells me it costs 1 iron. I would flip this iron over, take this, and that's it. And then at the end of the turn, I would check for an endgame trigger, or to see if I need to pick up cards again into my hand. If I have a certain number of cards only or no cards in my hand, I would pick all these up back into my hand, and it would be the next player's turn. So it's basically what you're doing from round to round. You play some resources, play some cards, buy some things, and it's the next player's turn. As you're playing cards, you are going to be earning these culture tokens. You are going to be earning these monuments, and the game end trigger is either when all of the space age cards are gone, when someone has 15 of the culture tokens over here, or when all of the monuments, which again sit at every level here, have been taken by the players. That's pretty much the game. Of course, that's a very surface level explanation. There's a lot to it, a lot of little rules, like being able, for example, to exchange two goods for a different good. There's rules for that. There are rules for attacking each other, which are here on the attack card. They have a red bottom there. They say the kind of card they are. You have the attack symbols here, which you are going to use to compare if you are stronger than the other opponents. Things like that. So, for example, this one here, it's called Warrior, and it says, all opponents with less military strength than you choose and deplete 2 resources. So I would play this card. I would count up my military strength, which again is these little symbols over here. It's a crossed axe and a spear. And then you'd see if you have more than your opponents. Of course, your opponents could at that moment play tactic cards, which can be played out of turn. And mostly you would do that out of turn just to count up the attack symbols so you are not bested. Things like that. So there's a lot of tactics in the game. The monuments here, as I said before, they are going to be given to players for accomplishing specific things, and they allow you to have a bunch of points at the end of the game mostly, but they'll give you some sort of power as well. So, for example, this Colossus of Rhodes says it takes 3 glory to win this, and it says activate an attack card during your turn, including activation by other cards. So, as this card sits over here, you are going to qualify for that. You've activated an attack card. And then you take one of your cubes and you put it on that card. And everybody can be working on that at the same time. So you can have multiple players doing it. When someone finally accomplishes it, in this case, Glory 3, they have 3 cubes on there. They are going to take that card and that is theirs. And this is true for every one of these. So there are different levels and, in fact, different monuments. There's 2 of each. And so that's basically it. You are going to be acquiring these. Leading Tower Pisa, for example. Glory 3. Purchase a card that is not from the lowest age available. So, for example, you're going to put a cube on this one. If right now in this game state, I bought this card, which is not at the very bottom. I put a cube on here, put enough cubes on it, it's yours. That is the general flow of the game. Get the most glory, get the most culture, and you win the whole thing. And that is an overview of Guns and Steel Renaissance. So let's go back up top, and let me tell you some final thoughts. I am a big fan of games that do a lot with a little. And this game certainly is one of those games. For just a few cards, you get a lot of gameplay in there, and it can be thematic if you involve yourself in what's going on. It can be filled with tactics, certainly. You have many different choices. How you pursue your little civilization, your little world, is really up to you. And that's kind of fascinating, I don't tend to be a big fan of Civ games, and by that I mean the big sprawling Civ games. And lots of rules, lots of content, many hours. But this I can get behind. This is a very clever, well put together game that just is able to pack so much in a small box. Even the concept that the cards are a resource on the back and then some effect on the front, the way that's implemented is smart. You can use half the cards. A lesser designer might have said, okay, you have resource cards sitting off to the side somewhere, and every time you give yourself one, you grab it and put it in front of you. But that's part of what's at play here, and I find it to be pretty solid. It's an interesting game. It's clever. Now, compared to the original Guns and Steel, it gets even better, because I think this one blows the first one out of the water for me. What they added here was the way, they added those culture tokens, for one thing. The first one does not have all of that going on. And the way in which you claim the wonders in this one is so much better. In the first one, you could buy those wonders. You didn't earn them over multiple rounds. You bought them. But then it was possible for them to be taken away from you. And that might be thematic, but it also made the game very frustrating because you would spend your hard-earned resources to acquire one, and then someone could attack you and take it away. I really didn't like that aspect of it. So the way it's handled in this one, I think is a lot cooler, and it makes the game less problematic. There's still some in-your-face action in here, but it isn't nearly as swingy, and it's not as mean-spirited, it seems to me. So if you have not played the first one, I'd recommend you go straight for this one. And if you did play the first one, you were a little on it, then I think you might still like this one. So check it out. One I would certainly recommend if, like me, you like a lot of game in a little box. This here is a good one. Guns and Steel Renaissance. Check it out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.